This is the Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 28, Halloween. You just heard Halloween by the king himself, King Diamond. This is the Requiem Metal Podcast Halloween special. I'm Margaret Off.
And I'm Jason Hundy. It is indeed Halloween, as the king has informed us. So we decided to do a little metallic special for you tonight because, of course, Halloween seems to be the most metal of all holidays.
Maybe we'll do a winter solstice show, too.
That's true. Although the king with no presents for Christmas would argue that Christmas may be the most metal of all holidays because of the evil of denying children of their presents. But we're going to kind of play kind of fast and loose with some of the music tonight and just kind of more have fun. It's not going to be so educational as usual.
Well, yeah, we're going to be all over the map. Just for the sake of variety and getting stuff in here that we wouldn't probably normally get the chance to play.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a neat opportunity to kind of mix it up a little bit and almost kind of do a random mix of a show that really has no rhyme or reason in terms of their musical connections. It's more thematic connections that we're looking for tonight. And
you can look forward to sets such as witches,
vampires / undead, and then more of a kind of a zombie potpourri of and then some death and killing kind of stuff. So it's all good. You know, we kind of looked around for some samples, horror movie samples that existed in some songs, and then we kind of looked for thematic elements, and there's some campiness to it too, because I mean Halloween, I mean people putting on costumes, it's, you know,
the whole concept's pretty real.
I remember hearing like a quote one time that, you know, anyone who was truly evil or like believed in the dead is certainly not going to go out on the night of Halloween, because it's where all the idiots go out and kind of put on costumes and stuff, and there's really nothing that dark or magical about the night. So, but the first set we're going to kind of get into here is dealing with witches, and both the birth of witches and also the hunting of witches. And
I think there's more hunting of witches.
Yeah, actually. I think there's a lot more hunting of witches. It seemed to be kind of a big horror movie theme, I think, for some of the Hammer films and stuff in England. And it certainly inspired 3 British bands that we're going to be kind of playing in this next set, as well as the birth of a witch. A witch is born from Gehenna, which is a Norwegian black metal band, kind of more
probably the third wave of black metal.
Yeah, and one of the more kind of sinister, you know, of the black metal bands. I mean,
I think the kind of Deathspell Omega owes a lot to them as well, as far as tonality. They're really eerie band. Yeah,
they definitely capture the Halloween spirit, if you will. But we're going to kind of start off with a kind of an all-time sample classic featuring the voice of Vincent Price, who I think makes a couple appearances on
Hopkins?
No, on the show. I think there will be multiple Vincent Price.
At least 2.
So be on the lookout for that. And please tell us if you have a Halloween favorite that we missed too. You can shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. So let's get things rolling. We've got Hopkins, Witchfinder General from Cathedral, which came from the Carnival Bazaar record, right?
Yeah, and also it was his own single too.
Yeah, that's right. And it had the great Fire cover from Arthur Brown. Gehenna, Witch is Born, from their second record. I can't recall what the title of that record is.
It's Malice, I believe, isn't it?
Is that Malice?
Or no, Seen Through the Veils of Darkness.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then we're going to play a sampling of I, the Witchfinder from Electric Wizard's Dope Throne, which features a great sample from, God, it escapes me right now. It was from some Spanish horror film, Mark of the Devil.
Mark of the Devil, okay.
And then we're going to close things out with the aptly titled Witchfinder General from Witchfinder General. So enjoy some themes of witches on Requiem Metal Podcast Halloween.
The year is 1645. One of the bloodiest of a bloody civil war. But now, a new pestilence is visited on the land, bringing in its wake an epidemic of killing and torture. This pestilence has a name.
I am Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder. You confess?
I am albino. You wish to see me?
because I'm the witchfinder general. Well, he picks us up, he knocks us down, he says he hates to swear. Blaze with us like bombs and tests, come on, let's get a game. Gun is tight, he'll take his back, say which little man. Whip you up, let's grab her rope and watch the best head. Well, you think you can beat me? Hang me completely. Should know better than that. I'll take your wenches, lie them on benches, feed them to a rat. And if you try me, even deny me, beat you, you're a brat. So come on, folks, don't try to provoke us to meet a fragile man. Well, I'm the witchfinder general.
Welcome back. That was Witchfinder General, Electric Wizard, Gehenna, and Cathedral, all doing some witch hunting type themed episodes of music there. Personal favorites out of that set for you in terms of?
No, it's a toss-up between the Cathedral and Gehenna tracks, I think.
Do you have a personal Halloween favorite by chance, Mark?
Not particularly, not that we haven't covered on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we.
I think my new favorite Halloween is Halloween by King Diamond.
Yeah, that's you can't beat that. That's why we chose that as the album opener. I got a soft spot for that or album closer, which we'll keep a mystery for now.
That's got other connotations.
Yeah, for me, it's got its own kind of thing, or maybe even some of the Slayer themed kind of evil stuff that we'll hear later. But we're going to be getting into some movies here, both movie samples, which you'll hear throughout the show in kind of random places, and hopefully you'll be able to place them in a couple times. There's a lot of kind of things that we left out that we would have liked to have put in with time constraints.
We've already got 19.
Oh my gosh,
we're pushing it out.
We're going to be getting after it, but we're going to start off with Iron Maiden's Wicker Man, which comes from the Citizen Kane of horror films, The Wicker Man.
Christopher Lee and Robert Woodward, is that
his name? I know
the guy that played the Equalizer on TV.
Yeah, Britt Eklund is the blonde, the hot blonde. She was
Sex on the Wall in the movie.
Yeah, she was a Bond girl in the Christopher Lee Bond, Man with the Golden Gun.
That's right.
From 1974.
The Man of the Three Nipples.
Yeah, there you go.
That's scary.
And cool movie. Please don't watch the Nicolas Cage one.
Please don't watch the Nicolas Cage one.
Go and find the original, the British one. I've got the wooden tin thing. I don't know. Do you have?
I've got a reissue of the Anchor Bay version of that. But you can find it on Netflix. It's definitely worth checking out.
It's a cool movie. And then
great. It's got like one of the best ending scenes next to like Planet of the Apes. And
for sure. Yeah, it's and that's why they call it the Citizen Kane. Probably just like the Rosebud kind of thing at the end of Citizen Kane is kind of the big reveal. And then one that Mark unearthed that I was had forgotten about even existed was the Hellraiser track from Entomb from the Hollow Man EP.
Mm-hmm. And this is actually, there's no vocals at all. It's just all different random clips out of the movie. Mm-hmm. It's pretty obvious.
Is it all samples from the first Hellraiser or just all of them?
I don't know. The first two are the only ones that I think are very good. I think it's just from the first one.
First one, yeah. That would make the most sense in terms of tradition. There was another Entomb song that we were going to play, Living Dead, which features some Vincent Price samples and stuff, but just for time-wise, and seeing as we'll probably do an Entomb show down the road, that's going to show up. That's from Clandestine. And then a band that Mark's kind of familiar with that we kind of unearthed tonight called Yirkun, which is a French band.
Yep.
Very very similar to the Gojira type sound.
Yeah, mixed between like that, Carcass, Arch Enemy, Behemoth.
Even some Pestilence, Testimony of Ancients.
Yeah. The weird thing is they had like three or four records for their career, and each one they tried to like mess around with the genre a little bit. This is the only one that I think that they kind of hit it right, where they actually didn't have like crummy thrash vocals or anything.
And it's really cool. And this is the first day I've heard it was today, and I was kind of all over it. And it's a tune called Occult Medicine, which kind of is about
the Reanimator
movies.
Or I don't know if it's about more the film or the H.P. Lovecraft short stories.
Could be one in both, yeah. And then we're going to close things out with a personal favorite of ours from Fantomas, which we'll talk more about who Fantomas are later, but it's
from their director's cut record.
Yeah, it's The Omen, Ave Satani. So enjoy some Wicker Man here.
What's your pleasure, Mr. Cotton?
Don't look at me.
just heard Fantomas, The Omen, Yirkun, Occult Medicine, Entombed Hellraiser, and we started things off there with Iron Maiden, Wicker Man. So tell us a little bit about the track we just heard, the Fantomas thing. Who is Fantomas?
Fantomas or Fantomas, however you want to say it. I'm not sure what the proper pronunciation, but it's Mike Patton, formerly Faith No More. It was Buzz Osborne from the Melvins.
Trevor Dunn
and Dave Lombardo from Slayer.
And Trevor Dunn's from Mr. Bungle. Yeah, he's the bass player there. And, of course, the esteemed drumming you heard there may have sounded somewhat familiar to you in terms of the style.
That's in my opinion, that's probably one of the best horror movie soundtracks I think out there, and probably one of the most eerie and indicative of the movie, opening themes. And
Jerry Goldsmith did the original score of that.
I think he won an Oscar for it.
Yeah, for those of you scoring at home. So, but well, you've got that new feature on your phone that does the little symbol thing.
The rim shots.
Yeah. But we're going to get into some vampire themes coming up next, as well as a little. We do a little cheat at the end with just talking about the undead, which the vampires are the undead.
That's true.
So we're not cheating too bad, but we're going to open things up with Moonspell's Vampira, and Moonspell's pretty popular in the underground metal scene, I'd say at this point. Pretty well established from Portugal. And what were you saying about his ability to roll R's and
sing death metal at the same time? I've never quite heard that. It's like if Charo could do death metal.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And this has, I'd say this song has equal parts very cool metallic and also equal parts kind of camp, which kind of fits in. It's like a harder, more sinister kind of typo negative.
There's definitely some Danzig and some Peter Steele injected in there. So,
and when we did our Danzig show last week, we were talking about this, like in between recording talk sets, like who is Danzig influenced today? Like no band was kind of like sticking out, but I guess your typo negatives, and certainly a band like Moonspell, you can definitely hear some of that kind of borderline camp versus
the melodrama and everything.
And then Coroner, Nosferatu off their R.I.P. record, I think it's their R.I.P.
It's off R.I.P. But it's pretty bombastic. I don't know if it is if it really feels very very Halloweeny outside of the the title there. But they're definitely practicing their scales on that song.
But much like and it kind of mimics in some ways like the Iron Maiden kind of stuff.
With Transylvania or something.
Yeah. So in some ways it feels no different than. I mean, Transylvania doesn't remind me of vampires necessarily, but again, it kind of fits a darker theme in some sort of ways. But it's an instrumental, as you mentioned. And Corner, I'm not for sure were they British.
No, they're from Switzerland, I believe.
Switzerland,
same place, same from Celtic Frost, right?
Yeah, and they were on the Noise. I think.
And they kind of fall in with. They almost sound more of like the German thrash than they do the that other scene. But
which would make sense because Switzerland is really kind of its own. It's like kind of part Italian, part German, and then part French. It's kind of like this mixture of all the countries that border it. So probably maybe they come from the German part of it, and we're listening to a lot of German thrash. And then an Alice Cooper cover, a very cool Alice Cooper cover, which is kind of hard to find. This Rebellion EP from Samael.
I don't know if that's been released as a double disc yet or not. Century Media was going through and basically putting all their EPs that they had and doubling up with the full-length albums for reissues.
So it's probably. I just remember back in the day, it was kind of hard to get a hold of.
Really tough.
And it's a really neat cover from an old Alice Cooper song from the 70s. And I love it.
Are they from Switzerland as well?
Samael, yeah. Are they Swiss or Austrian? I think they're Swiss. Yeah. That's weird. We didn't even plan that. So back-to-back Swiss metal. And, if only we had some Celtic Frost to throw in there as well. And then we're going to close things out with Slayer's Live Undead, which, again, is probably more about the zombies, I would say.
Or else it's social commentary.
Yeah, probably. But so were zombie movies, to be fair.
Sure,
Romero was always commenting stuff. And that comes from 1988's South of Heaven record. So enjoy some Moonspell to get things going.
Above your head lies a star. In your heart is buried a jewel. a certain you wish to die. You're reeling together poison, and you spread it as you breathe. In a unique Transylvanian dream, consuming the grain of all grains. So open your arms, they are shaped as wings, and the serenade of revenge glows in your lips. The summer you're staying in is now defined, and your star has started to shine.
thing. The uses for you, darling.
around you. Hell, people spell takes the soul. Hear the sound of the bell, counting off death's toll. Now the issuing to living rock, searching for human flesh and life blood. I'm undead.
That was Slayer, Live Undead, preceded by Samael, and then Coroner, and then Moonspell kind of opened things up. And in particular on that Slayer song, just not that we're commenting too much about music tonight, but it's
all about mood
more
tonight.
about mood and theme and stuff. But that song might be, might be my favorite Lombardo performance on Slayer in terms
Because
of
that great breakdown where it's
just the
blasting.
techniques, and I mean, just some of the fills that he's doing in between, and how it's very seamless. It's very predictive of what Mastodon is like really able to do nowadays, which is almost do constant drum fills throughout a song, but yet like never lose direction of like the songwriting. you know?
really.
So kind of something cool about that. But now we're going to kind of continue on the theme of the undead for a little while. We didn't bring any Mortician. I know all those great Mortician fans out there are probably incredibly disappointed, but
Yeah, here's my impersonation of that. There you go. That's every Mortician song.
exactly, it kind of sounds like a giant lawnmower blowing air into your face or something.
I saw him in New York with AC and Brutal Truth, and they basically it sounded like you turned on Electric Razor and then amplified that, and then you heard kind of some drum machine stuff, and then just somebody belching into a microphone.
Pretty awful stuff. I saw them live once and kind of just stood as far away from them as I could. But the other band we missed, which we may have wanted to include, was some Deceased with Fearless Undead Machines, or is it Fearless Undead Machines? I think.
Yeah, basically their entire back catalog is all horror
about
themed, so.
zombie stuff. But we're gonna bounce into Cemetery and Julia's No More, which is a really really hip tune. What album does that come from? From Cemetery.
It's from Godless Beauty, their second record.
And that features a sample from
Evil Dead 2, I believe.
Evil Dead 2. So we kind of poked around a little bit to find out lyrically what this song is about, if it had zombie-oriented themes, but there's
just
no
about
lyric.
laying somebody to rest, basically, what the lyrics seem to be. So.
But it's got an Evil Dead sample,
Exactly.
so it fits us for tonight. And then Midnight at the Graveyard from Witchery, from their debut record Restless and Wild. Restless and Dead, yeah, which is a play on Accept, Restless and Wild. And then Walking Corpse from Brutal Truth, which featured the sample from Plague Dogs, which is an animated kind of film.
It's by the same director who did Watership Down. It's another it's a dogs being, vivisection being performed in dogs and stuff. So
but it's called Walking
Halloween.
Corpse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
plus we wanted to get some grindcore in it.
Exactly.
So.
We're going with it. We wanted to play the whole musical gamut of different styles of music and things. And then we're going to close things with another well-sampled song from Children of Bodom. It's called Taste of My Sith from Fall of the Reaper. And this was
Exorcist 3.
Exorcist 3.
With George C. Scott. And actually, I think the sample is Brad Dourif.
Yeah.
From... people have probably seen him, and he's been a billion things.
Well, he was
in Deadwood. He was in
X-Files season 1.
That's right.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is the big.
Yep.
His big
Lord of the Rings. I mean, he's
Lord of the Rings.
He's kind of a cult.
Yeah,
character actor.
He played Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, and then I think he plays. I think his name was Billy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's the one who slits his wrist after they bring the prostitutes in and stuff. So, and this has something to do with cutting or something. I can't remember the sample. Doesn't it say something about like cutting or killing? I don't know. It's been, we've been listening to so many horror movie samples tonight that they've all sort
it's
of
scary.
Yeah,
that's how I need
it's a little bit scary. So enjoy a set of Undead moving towards The Exorcist at the end.
The silence came so suddenly, no longer can I hear breathe. I had no feeling, so this is how it all would end. When you leave no more, my love will knock the door, so it should never be returning. I hold her in my arms, I wish that nothing of me on, wherever she is going.
sky. The demons will come out of their hiding places, and their howls will be heard in the night, announcing death.
Darkness I snow, just like an angel bleeding in the snow. White turns to red, death lies ahead. Go.
I hope you make sure we're properly dead before you start.
That was Taste of My Sith from Children of Bodom. Before that, Brutal Truth, Witchery, and we opened things up with Cemetery with some Evil Dead sampled and Julia's No More. Hopefully, you've enjoyed our Halloween show tonight. I know we've had a lot of fun kind of throwing it all together and stuff. The last set's kind of more into the classic metal realm, wouldn't you say?
This is probably one of my all-time favorite Priest songs.
Oh, this by far,
The Ripper,
is it might be my favorite Priest song, along with
Exciter's pretty good too, though.
Yeah, I like something better off that same record though. Beyond the Realms of Death, is a really pretty nifty song. But The Ripper, I mean, I kind of had a Jack the Ripper obsession when I was younger.
Yeah,
and I remember doing like a book report on him, like in 9th grade, and when I was over student teaching in London, I tried to find the Jack the Ripper tour and all that kind of stuff. And
was it the Whitechapel area or something?
Yeah, it's in the Whitechapel, East London. And East London, we kind of wandered around one time during the day, luckily, to kind of find people that knew where the Jack the Ripper tour was. And the locals kind of stare at you like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, like guys who've been living with stuff for 200 years.
Yeah, and I mean, East London is pretty rough area. I mean, it's pretty ethnic nowadays. A lot of like Muslims living there, a lot of Indian, Pakistanis. So like, that's probably why most of them were like, who, Jack the Ripper? You know, like, we're like first generation immigrants here or something. Yeah. But yeah, the Ripper, definitely very cool, and it's neat to be able to get, you know, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and some of these, you know, kind of classic Slayer.
Well, and even coming up, you know, one of your
favorites. One of my all-time favorites is what we decided to close things out, and I gotta hand it to Mark, because Mark was the saving grace here. I had totally overlooked this song, and then in the 11th hour, Mark said, "Hey, wait, what about this song?
Nightmare on Elm Street."
Yeah, part 3, The Dream Warriors, and Dokken from their fourth full length, Back for the Attack.
Yep.
But it was featured prominently in the closing credits of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And if I remember right,
they had a video with Freddy in it, didn't they?
The most brilliant heavy metal video of all time. I mean, what's more evil than Freddy Krueger bouncing out of the wall during George Lynch's guitar solo and dragging him into the nightmare realm of Halloween. So
George always gets beat up when he does solos, doesn't he?
He does. Well, there was that
chained to the wall.
Chained to the wall. There was
he's chained to a gurney in one of them too, isn't he?
Well, and then there's the famous story about Lynch when he was recording the guitar solo, I think for In My Dreams, and he was playing up on a volcano, and they were filming it with a helicopter or something like that, and he was up there and like
with some lava or something.
Yeah, like it started, like, you know, steam started coming up, and he was like, geez, I got to get the hell out of here. Yeah,
how can you top that? It
was on like the 40 most like least metal moments or something VH1 did, things. Yeah, years ago. But I'm a out of the closet Dokken fan.
I'm a recent convert, especially the Don Dokken solo stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, anything that George Lynch does is fairly tasteful, except for his solo stuff.
Exactly.
But when it seems like when he's kind of like locked in with Don Dokken, they kind of balance each other out in their hatred of each other. So,
sure.
But so we hope you enjoyed us. You know, playing some Halloween music for you. And again, if you have a favorite Halloween song that we missed, or you liked what we did,
or you hated what we did,
yeah, exactly. You know, again, this is all, you know, in good fun and just trying to, you know, give you a kind of a wide overview and sampling of different forms.
Well, this
of
is really first our theme show where we, outside of like you know, seminal compilations, where we can actually do a bunch of different bands too. So.
And we kind of like to mix it up and do something like this. And it took a while to put together. And normally we haven't had a lot of free time to do this kind of stuff. But, you know, we did it for you, for the wonderful, you know, holiday.
And it's a testament you can keep and you can play every Halloween.
This is true.
Maybe we'll see if we can come up with a Thanksgiving show.
Yeah.
Or Boxing Day or...
well, for Thanksgiving show, we could do one about Native Americans and Indians and such.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of...
you got some Anthrax, some Iron Maiden.
Exactly. A lot of bad stuff's gone down to the Indians, so we could celebrate that. But anyhow, for Requiem Metal Podcast, I'm Jason Hundy.
And I'm Mark Rudolph. Enjoy The Ripper and Dream Warriors.
You're in for surprise. You're in for a shock. In London town streets, when there's darkness and fog, when you least expect me, and you turn your back, I'll attack. I smile when I'm sneaking through shadows by the wall. I laugh when I'm creeping but you won't hear me at all. Oh, hear my warning. Never turn your back on the Ripper. You'll soon shake with fear, and never knowing if I'm near. I'm sly and I'm shameless, nocturnal and nameless, except for the Ripper. Or if you like, Jack the Knife.